Will the clerk designate the Crockett Amendment?
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute as offered by Ms. Crockett of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. Ms. Crockett is recognized for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm introducing this amendment to emphasize the importance of telling the truth. Chairman Comer has given us alternative facts about the testimony of Mr. Devin Archer provided to this committee, the Democrats and Republicans, but behind closed doors. Again, it's common sense not to trust my colleagues on the other side of the aisle when it comes to stating the facts, because they are the same ones that gave us alternative facts about the election. They gave us alternative facts about January 6th, and thus far they have given us alternative facts, at least to the American people, about their motivation for this impeachment inquiry. So I do have a few receipts that I'd like to go through. On December 6, 2023, Chairman Comer tweeted out that President Biden emailed with his son's business associates. But let me be clear, when consulting the transcript, it was determined that those were alternative facts. The actual facts found in Mr. Archer's transcribed interview show that President Biden was not involved in his son's business activities and that during his more than a decade-long business relationship with Hunter Biden, Archer never witnessed President Biden have any involvement in his son's business dealings or take any official actions to benefit Hunter Biden or his businesses. And Archer never witnessed Hunter Biden discuss the substance of his business with his father or ask his father to take any official actions. Again, in August of 2023, Chair Comer stated in an interview to Newsmax that Mr. Archer, quote, admitted that the Burisma executives were squeezing Hunter Biden to try to do everything he could to get the prosecutor Shokin fired because they were going after their corrupt energy company. And lo and behold, a few days later, Joe Biden actually did that. After consulting the transcript, yet again, it was determined another alternative fact. The actual facts are that Mr. Archer specifically spoke about Ukraine and Hunter Biden's role with Burisma, the Ukrainian energy company on whose board they both served, and repeatedly stated Hunter Biden never discussed Burisma with his father and never asked his father to take an official action to benefit him or Burisma. Mr. Archer further stated that he had no reason to believe Vice President Biden's call for Shokin's removal was driven by anything other than the U.S. government's anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. Chairman Comer again tweeted, he loves his Twitter, on December 6th that President Biden was on speakerphone with the Biden family business associates over 20 times. We consulted the transcript and it was determined again, another alternative fact. Mr. Archer's transcribed interview actually states that while Hunter Biden spoke frequently with his father, sometimes when Hunter Biden was with other people, Mr. Archer stated he never witnessed any discussion of substantive business during these calls. Again, Chair Comer's association with reality about information brought forth by witnesses he demanded come in. Well, Chair Comer, we spun it again about Mr. Archer's statements when it came down to President Biden. When we consult the transcript over and over and over, it's been determined that the facts that have been laid out by the members of this committee on the Republican side have been alternative facts. When Mr. Archer was directly asked during the transcribed interview if President Biden was the brand, Mr. Archer clarified that D.C. was the brand and that he and Hunter Biden helped to assemble a team of attorneys, lobbyists, and public officials, public affairs professionals to handle Burisma's government relations, and President Biden was not part of the D.C. team. It is no wonder that Hunter Biden wanted to come before everyone in public because, Mr. Chairman, it is vital that we continually have to set the record straight and make sure that alternative facts are not what's being handed out to the American people, but instead the facts, the real facts, reality.
Well, the gentleman.
I would also like to, yes.
Just for a quick question, Ms. Crockett, and I thank you for that illuminating intervention, because I'm starting to wonder if the Russian hoax should apply to the lie about Burisma, which sits at the very heart of this investigation. That's the real hoax, isn't it? In fact, In fact, the Lev Parnas, who helped make it up, has been out there begging Chairman Comer and the Republicans to end this wild goose chase and to have him come testify about how they tried to concoct the lie in the first place. And yet, that's a witness that they don't want to hear from. I thank you. I yield back to you, Ms. Crockett.
They don't want to hear that. And if we care about making sure that the American people know that we have transparency and truth on this committee, then I would implore this committee to release the transcripts publicly instead of tweeting out alternative facts about what has been testified to.
Mr. Chairman.
As previously approved, each side has.
Mr.
As
Chairman.
previously approved, each side has 10 minutes debate. Will Mr. Chair now recognize Mr. Palmer?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we table this amendment. It is dilatory and not germane to the markup.
But, Mr. Chairman, didn't we already agree, I think, to have 10 minutes on each side? I'm not sure Mr. Palmer was aware of that agreement.
Yeah. Okay. We've already agreed to have debate, 10 minutes debate. I'm sorry I didn't make
I
that
withdraw
clear.
the motion.
So, does anyone wish to speak? Mr. Goldman.
Thank you. I think this amendment is very important because it goes to the heart of the dispute that the chairman and the witness seem to be having, which is where would his testimony take place? The chairman is insisting that it be done in a closed-door deposition, whereas the witness is insisting to take up the chairman's original offer to do this in a public hearing. And one of the reasons that the witness continues to push for a public hearing is the Devon Archer closed-door transcribed interview. That is one of only 2 transcripts of, I believe, at least 18 transcribed interviews or depositions that this Republican majority has released. But it gives us really, really good insight into exactly what the chairman and the majority would plan to do with Hunter Biden's closed-door testimony. Let's take, for example, just, I think, earlier this weekend, Chairman Jordan of the Judiciary Committee, also a member of this committee, said on television that the most powerful evidence of President Biden's wrongdoing is the testimony of Devon Archer. So I wonder what is that testimony that is so powerful? Was it the testimony of Devon Archer when he said that President Biden was never involved in any of Hunter's business ventures? Or was it the testimony that President Biden never received any money from Hunter's business interest? And remember, Devon Archer testified he was Hunter Biden's primary business partner. He was on the board of Burisma with Hunter Biden. So he had firsthand knowledge of all of Hunter Biden's business deals. Now, maybe if it wasn't those, it was the fact that President Biden, according to Devon Archer, never received any bribes from the Ukrainian government. In fact, maybe it was even that he said that President Biden never discussed business with Hunter Biden or Hunter's business associates. It must be that he was focusing on the times when President Biden met or spoke to Hunter Biden's business associates. That clearly has to be what the chairman was talking about. So it must be that when you look at the transcript, what he was referring to is when Devon Archer repeatedly said that they never discussed business, that they only talked about, quote, niceties, including, and this is according to Devon Archer's testimony, how the weather was, and that none of the discussions ever related to business. So the best evidence that these Republicans want to put forward is testimony that completely absolves President Biden from any involvement, association, benefit from, or other interactions with Hunter Biden's business interests. Now, Chairman Comer you were asked a few weeks ago on CNN what you thought the best evidence was of wrongdoing by President Biden, and you said that the allegations of the bribe from the Burisma founder, should we call it, I guess, the Burisma hoax now? Because unlike with Russia's interference in the 2016 election, which Special Counsel Mueller unequivocally determined was known to the Trump campaign, was welcomed by the Trump campaign, and was used by the Trump campaign, in this case, Vice President Biden's urging Ukraine to fire the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, which was consistent with official U.S. policy. It was consistent with the European Union policy. It was consistent with a bipartisan Senate delegation who urged it as well, was actually bad for Burisma, and therefore it was bad for Hunter Biden. And who should we look to determine whether that is the case? How about Devin Archer, the star witness, who was also on the board of Burisma? Nope. Devin Archer said that it was his understanding that Burisma had Shokin, the Prosecutor General, under control, and that getting rid of him would have been bad for Burisma. And of course, it was bad for Burisma, because as soon as Shokin was gone, after he had allowed a British case to lapse, the next Prosecutor General came in and did start investigating the founder of Burisma. So it turned out to be exactly correct. This is why Hunter Biden wants to testify in public, is because if you had not released that transcript and we had just relied on the false representations of the majority members of this committee about what Devin Archer said, we would never have known that Devin Archer actually absolves Joe Biden of any involvement of any wrongdoing related to Hunter Biden's business interests. And we would not know that this entire investigation, the public would not know that this entire investigation is a complete sham. And I yield back.
The minority will have 4 minutes. The majority has 10 minutes. I'll go first. I must oppose this amendment, but I have to state something. I want everyone to understand this. A lot has been said about people on this committee running to the press during a deposition or during an interview. During the two main interviews of this impeachment inquiry investigation, the Devin Archer interview and the George Burgess interview, the very first person on this committee to run to the reporters was none other than Dan Goldman. That is a fact. Does anyone want to dispute that right now? The very
I would like you to identify one thing that I said that was not consistent with the transcript.
You're talking about you are talking about running to the press and leaking.
Why don't you release the Burgess transcript?
You said Hunter Biden didn't want to come because of leaks. You're the leaker. You are the leaker, Mr. Goldman.
You do your check.
You have 4 minutes remaining. This is my time. You're out of order. You're out of order. I let you sit there and regurgitate your baloney for 6 minutes. I oppose this amendment. This amendment strikes the entire section about why Hunter Biden's testimony is necessary for the committee's legitimate oversight investigation. The amendment discusses a single deposition with Devin Archer and gets rid of all other relevant information as to why his deposition is important. The amendment distorts the reality of how the committee has handled this investigation. Devin Archer has stated publicly that claims made by the Democrats in this amendment are categorically false. Specifically, Devin Archer stated that Democrats' claims that President Biden was not involved in Hunter's businesses in any way was false. Devin Archer said that's categorically false. He said Joe Biden, quote, was aware of Hunter's business. He met with Hunter's business partners. I recommend that all members of this committee oppose this misguided amendment, and I ask to submit to the record Devin Archer's interview where he says one Democratic claim about the Biden business is categorically false, and that was what I just mentioned with respect to Joe's involvement, knowledge in his businesses. Without objection, so ordered. Now the minority party has 4 minutes remaining. Chair recognizes Ms. Stansbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just very quickly want to clarify that when I mentioned that the majority had run to the press and misrepresented what happened in that interview yesterday, the point was that they misrepresented what happened in the interview. And I know that for a fact because somebody shared with me the text message that the Republican staff sent around all the members. And I also heard directly from the press what was said. So that's what we're talking about here is misrepresentation of the facts. And with that, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you very much. And I'm fascinated by this exchange because most committees I've been on, when the transcripts are released, it serves the vital function of transparency, but it also keeps people from misrepresenting and distorting the facts in advance. But if you withhold all but 2 transcribed interviews, I think there's something like 16 or 17 that haven't been released by the majority, then that does become an incentive to misrepresent and distort. I don't blame Mr. Goldman if he ran to the press to try to get out the true story before others go out and tell a lie about what's taking place if we're not going to turn the transcripts over. And I wonder whether you, Mr. Chairman, could commit to turn over all of the transcribed interviews
the gentleman yield for a question
and to the Congress and to the people of the United States of America.
Ranking member,
yes, by all means.
The question?
Yeah.
Does the ranking member presume that his Republican colleagues intend to lie about transcripts?
But
you seem to have that presumption.
What I will presume is based on the facts that there have been multiple distortions and misrepresentations in the past, and the vast majority of the transcribed interviews have not been released. Someone give me the exact numbers, but I believe only 2 transcribed interviews out of 17 or 18 have been released. I've never seen that before, and I'm baffled by it. I don't understand it.
In the ranking member's esteemed background and knowledge of judicial affairs, when there's ongoing investigations and multiple witnesses in complex cases, isn't it common for full transcripts to not be released?
No, it's not.
Within the parameters?
No, but I don't think so. But in any event, we're talking about some that took place 6 months ago, 8 months ago. But somebody's going to give me a list of how many we're talking about here. There's 17 total. Only 2 transcribed interviews have been released. So then it does become a race to get out to say, what you think happened. Why don't we just give the people the transcribed interviews? We talk about transparency and accountability. That's the dominant theme of this committee. Isn't that something we can agree to?
Will the ranking member yield for 1 minute?
Yes, by all means.
I yield.
I have a question for the ranking member. If it is generally the practice of an investigator to withhold all of the transcripts during the investigative phase, would that normally also include releasing 2 of them?
Well, that strikes me as odd. That does look like, the famed cherry picking. It's as if to say, well, 2 of these interviews helped us. 15 or 16 of them don't help us, so we're going to bury them someplace. So that's odd, but I want to presume the best of my colleagues, Mr. Higgins, and that's why I'm asking the chairman to explain what is the practice here.
Well, you complain that we don't release transcripts. You complain because we do release transcripts. Honestly, we released those 2 transcripts because you had misrepresented so much what Devin Archer said. That's probably one reason he went on Tucker Carlson's show to call you out for misrepresenting what he said in the transcribed interview. But
so you are able to get them ready. You are able to get them ready, in other words, and you thought that it was
we have other witnesses
important
to interview. You know how it works, Mr. Raskins. You're playing like you don't know how this works. You're playing and trying to act like you've never done an investigation before when you've led both impeachments in the January 6th.
I didn't lead the first impeachment, but
I wouldn't want to admit to leading that first impeachment either.
I would have 10 nicknames from President Trump by now if I'd led that one.
Well, I think your all's time has pretty much expired. Does anyone on our side have anything to add? I don't see anything. So, who's that? Mr. Gosar.
Yeah, we talk about facts. It wasn't U.S. policy to do what Biden did in Ukraine. The Obama administration actually said that Ukraine had complied with the law and that the loan should go through. Yes, they did. And that the vice president changed it on an audible over there. So the other thing I want to point out is if the president didn't know anything about Hunter Biden's businesses, how do you explain the 14, 15, 16, I can't remember now how many times his partner actually went to the White House? How do you explain that? How do you explain this guy, Devin Archer, shows up at the White House? Who are you? Normally, the person's going to say, well, I'm Hunter Biden's business partner. That's typically what the average person would say. So how come you didn't know anything about that?
Mr. Gosar, for the 6 people in America who are still watching our hearing, could you just explicate what you think the presidential crime is?
Oh, I'm just saying right now, we're just talking about the facts. The facts here are misplayed. I mean, you complain about us, I'm going to complain about you because
Would the gentleman yield
the facts.
for 1 second?
I'll give you a second.
Mr. Gosar's time.
Just, I'm not going to ask you to take my representation for it. I would ask you to go read the transcripts of the State Department witnesses in the first impeachment who were in the Ukraine embassy and in the State Department and were the ones who created and made the official U.S. policy, who all testified that Vice President Biden was acting consistent with official U.S. policy.
Okay, well, that's not what we received. And when we start looking at this, the courts, I know the ranking member always goes to the courts. You had a judge that basically said this honeypot of a deal for Hunter was no good. No one was going to get that. How do you explain the slow walking, by the Justice Department on the IRS claims? And how many people get a chance to do that?
Well, with the gentleman yield, that's a great point. And when the courts ruled against Hunter Biden, I don't think you heard a single complaint from anybody on our side of the aisle. We said, let the justice system proceed. But when the court said that the January 6th committee was validly and constitutionally composed, we still have people today who violated their subpoenas who are whining about how the committee is illegal. I mean, come on. I mean, how do you feel about that one?
Could I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, why did you all not hold them in contempt?
Hold who in contempt?
The people that didn't.
Oh, we didn't have time at that point. I mean, we got up to the very end of the Congress.
I was just wondering.
But if you want to work on it now, let's do it. No. I'm totally with you, Mr. Chairman.
No. I was just curious as to why you didn't. All right.
Well, let's make it bipartisan.
I'd like
everybody good?
That
We're square.
Hold anyone who's violated
No, I was just wondering. I mean, that's a tool that Congress has. If you've been on TV several times saying that people should honor congressional subpoenas.
And I believe
when they don't, you hold them in contempt.
Whether it's Steve Bannon, Dan Scavino, Jim Jordan, or Hunter Biden, if somebody is...
But you did hold the other two.
I'm sorry?
You did hold two of those in contempt of court.
We did. Well, Steve Bannon's been convicted by a jury, by a court. He's been convicted in court. And still, I don't think we could get a single person on your side of the aisle, other than Ms. Mace, to utter a word about people who violated subpoenas in the last Congress. I mean, that's extraordinary. And all that I've been saying about Hunter Biden is he accepted what was your original offer. You didn't like that offer anymore. You put out.
Let me say this, and then your time's expired, and we're going to get to the vote. Hunter Biden is more than welcome to come for a hearing after the deposition.
Okay, you didn't say that before, but that's cool. You've changed the offer.
Chairman, hold on. Will you
guarantee
the time is
that
there will be a public
hearing? You have talked and talked.
Will you guarantee that there will be a public hearing if he were to come in?
After the deposition, I guarantee.
Say right now,
yes.
We'll have a public hearing with Hunter Biden.
Absolutely, we've said that.
All right. Yeah, I know. We